If your goal is to lose the most amount of fat possible, should you be doing fasted cardio or should you be doing high intensity? The answer may actually surprise you. So really when it comes down to this whole age-old debate of fasted cardio versus high intensity, it's gonna come down to three things. Number one, how much time do you have at your disposal? Number two, what is your recovery like? And then last but not least, number three, consistency. So at the end of the day, both methods have been shown to burn fat, and there's even some research that might suggest that high intensity training is actually going to be more effective because it's going to burn the same amount, if not more, in a very shorter time span. And we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna look at things like, well, where are those calories coming from? Are they coming from fat solely? Or are they coming from carbohydrates? So we will go into that later in the video. But first, let's go ahead and look at this whole idea of time. So when you're asking the question, which one should you do? It really comes down to, well, how much time do you have? So if you have an hour every single day to give to walking in the morning and you can do that, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that if that's something that you have the time for. But for a lot of people who are really busy and who don't have the time to dedicate an hour every single day to cardio, then high intensity training might make more sense. The second thing that we have to look at is your ability to recover. So if you are training 3 to 4 times a week with weights, but then you're also going to be doing high intensity training, you might not be able to recover in time for your training sessions. And so this is something that you guys really have to be keeping into consideration and something that you have to track on your own. Let's say, for example, that you have to do squats on Wednesday, but you did a 20-minute Tabata session on Tuesday. Well, if you're still feeling under-recovered from your Tuesday session, that's probably actually going to be a little bit worse, because the thing that's going to benefit you the most is the strength training and making sure you are seeing those gains in the gym. So for me personally, this is why I enjoy walking and why it is the main tool that I use to get shredded, because number one, it's low impact. Number two, it's not something that I have to recover from, right? I mean, I don't know anyone who said I had the most intense walking session ever, unless you're walking like 30,000 steps in a single day. And last but not least, it just makes you feel better. I don't know how many times I've gone out and gone for a brisk walk, and you just feel like you have more energy. I don't remember the last time anyone's ever told me that they felt really good from doing a bout of sprints. And that's why that's why number three really comes down to consistency. I can do sprint training, but can I do it consistently enough while recovering to then feel like I am getting the results that I need? For sometimes not. For most people, probably not either. So you really have to stick with something that you can stick to at the end of the day. So now let's look at the whole idea of walking burns more fat and cardio or high intensity type training burns more carbs. Well, this really is not looking at the big picture. So we're going to look at the energy systems used for both things. And then the next thing is we're also going to take into consideration some other things like why one might burn more carbs and why one might burn more fat, but does that actually equal more fat loss? So first and foremost, when you walk, it's not intense enough for your body to need to pull glycogen storage. So yes, it makes sense. Your body's going to go through an energy system process known as beta oxidation, where your body's just saying, hey, I am moving and I require energy, but it's not intense enough where I need to be pulling glycogen stores from the muscle tissue. I don't need that. So I don't really need the carbohydrates. So your body knows that, hey, I can burn fat because this is a low intensity activity, and it's usually for a longer duration. So when you put that on paper, yeah, you might find that more fat was burned in the process of walking. On the other hand, if you're going to be doing bouts of sprint training, or let's say you're going to be doing, 500-meter rows or something like that, well, because that is high intensity and because you are requiring energy very quickly and it's anaerobic, yeah, your body is going to need fuel very fast. And so it's going to be pulling from your glycogen stores, it's going to be requiring ATP, and it's going to be requiring glucose. All those things are necessary for your body to get through that rapid and high intensity activity. But now at the end of the day, whether you burned carbs or whether you burned fat, does that necessarily mean one was better than the other when it comes to overall fat loss? And the answer is no, because at the end of the day, whether you are burning more fat or whether you are burning more carbs really comes down to, at the end of the day, how many calories are you burning? So let's say, for example, you have two individuals They both burn 2,000 calories once activity is factored in. Now, both individuals start to add some type of training. Person A adds in 30 minutes of walking, which let's say that leads to 200 calories burned from fat specifically. And the other person adds in 10 minutes of high intensity training, and person B ends up burning 300 calories extra. 100 calories was coming from fat, and the extra 200 were coming from carbohydrates. So at the end of the day, while the other person, person A, burned more coming from fat, person B still burned more overall calories, even though only 100 of those calories were coming from fat. And so when it comes to overall weight loss or fat loss, you can't just solely be looking at where those calories are coming from. However, even with all that being said, you do have to look at the bigger picture, because while high intensity may burn more for a shorter time commitment, you also have to factor in those other things that we talked about, such as your ability to recover and your ability to stay consistent. Let's say person A, even though they're burning 200 calories a day from walking, and the other person's burning, let's say 300 to 500, because sometimes he's like really getting it, right? However, he's not able to recover. So he's only able to do high intensity twice per week. So let's say on average, he's burning around 750 calories per week from high intensity training, because he is not able to consistently do that type of training without impeding his recovery. While on the other hand, person A, even though they are burning less, the amount of walking that they are committing to, it's not that big of a time commitment. It's not impeding the recovery. And the last thing is, it's easier for them to stay consistent with. So at the end of the week, they have burned 1,400 calories. And see, this is why in a vacuum setting, when you compare both, high intensity type training might look better on paper. Most people in general would not be able to stick to a high intensity routine where they could easily outperform daily walking. So if that was all it took, walking would win. However, we do have one extra thing that we have to consider, and that is the body's ability to adapt. So now we know, okay, well, as of right now, walking looks like it's winning because it has the ability to be more consistent and it's not going to impede recovery. While on the other hand, it looks like high intensity training is losing because harder to recover from and you can't really stay as consistent. So let's say the first time you get around 5,000 steps, you burn 250 calories. But is that necessarily true the 10th time you go walking? Is it true the 20th time you go walking? So even though on paper, it looks like, okay, I'm hitting my 10,000 steps or however many steps you're getting per day, your body's also adapting to that. And over time, it's going to say, hey, based on your average step count, that is now my new baseline. So your body is actually going to be burning less the more you repeatedly do that. Now, this is really where high intensity starts to win, because it's much harder for your body to adapt to high intensity training because there are more variables that you can switch up over time to make sure that your body is not adapting and that you are seeing some form of progressive overload. When it comes to walking, that's not necessarily something you can do unless you are tracking your average pace, your average step count, your average heart rate, and you are continually trying to make it more difficult or more challenging. So let's say for this example, the first time you walked 5,000 steps, it took you 1 hour. Well, you can use that as a variable to track and say, the next time that I'm going to walk 5,000 steps, I want to do it in 50 minutes. So now you are indirectly trying to increase your average pace to make sure you are getting those same steps but in less time, which is also going to make sure that your heart rate is going up faster. And I think this is something that people don't take into consideration when they're using walking as a tool for fat loss. They just think, hey, I'm gonna go walk my dog, or I'm just gonna briskly go get my steps over the course of the day. And that is not necessarily fat loss type walking. If you are going to use walking as a tool for fat loss, you still need to look at the variables and make sure that you are increasing the variables over time. Otherwise, you are just walking. So there's a lot that we can go into with this whole idea and this topic, and over the course of the next couple weeks, I'll continue making videos on walking specifically for fat loss and how you can put a program together to make sure that you walk your way down to sub 10% body fat. So if that's something that you guys are really interested in and looking forward to, just make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel so that you don't miss when that video drops. And also, if you guys are really interested in the whole idea of fat loss and you want to get started on a plan, I have created something for you. It's a brand new thing that just launched on my website website, and you can get it now for free. And it's 8 weeks of training and nutrition just to make sure that you guys start the new year off the right way. And I put the link in the description below so that you guys have it for free and that you can get started on your own program. And that's it for today's video. If you guys really like this content and enjoy it, just show some love by hitting that like button. And as always, guys, stay strong, and I'll see you